The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Back to sweet, sweet normalcy we go. It was fun. I will give you. The trade deadline was a hoot, but trying to get through all of that while fighting an upper respiratory infection and had some play-by-play stuff going on as well. It was rough. So back we are into normalcy. It's Monday. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. I am Dan Besbris. Same as usual, same as I was. Still coughing, still congested, but hanging in there. I am a little bit stronger of voice today than I was on Friday, but again, we'll sort of see how that goes by the end of the podcast. And we've got some things to cover. We've got news. We've got teams starting their guys for the first time. We've seen wins and losses from the trade deadline already, although all of that still, you need a couple games to shake these things out. You've seen revenge angles start to work their way back into, I don't want to say a better situation, but you're starting to see teams go back to needing different motivational standpoints. It's a lot of, the tracking part of this is really astounding, and I'm glad that we're doing it that way because you're seeing these really easy to explain trends. But anyway, we'll get into that later in the podcast. The most important thing we do on Mondays is the reverse chronological lightning round, but before we even get to that, I'd like to take a moment for any of you that may not have listened to the Friday show, just to give everyone a massive thank you for the Hoop Ball record traffic at the website, on the shows, just everything always maxing out. It's so cool to know that there's growth on a year-over-year basis, and you guys are the reason for that. Now, of course, that being said, we're at a part of the year now where things do start to trend down a little bit. Just people paying attention to basketball, fantasy basketball at least, does begin to dwindle starting basically after the All-Star break because leagues start to end. Percentages of people just don't have to be invested in fantasy basketball anymore. And I understand that, but the more of you that stick with us here through the end of the season and then even to the offseason, the better. We're going to be covering good stuff all around the calendar year. We don't take breaks here at Fantasy NBA Today. That's not how we got to this point. It's by having shows all the time, constantly. So often that you guys are like, I don't even want to listen to every show anymore. We have a few things that I'll throw into the middle of this episode, but of course, first thing is follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. You guys know that one already. At Hoop Ball Fantasy is the Twitter feed for Hoop Ball's blurbs. Hoop-ball.com is the website. And of course, all shows are brought to you by our good pals at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. I believe that the coupon code remains active today, but let me know if it doesn't. The code is HoopBall for 15% off any coffee purchased at HawaiianIsles.com. We do have a coupon code officially in effect because, actually, it was because one of you guys asked for it. Like, hey, can we get a coupon code? We're buying all this Hawaiian Isles coffee, and it'd be nice if, throw a couple bones back our way. And I thought, that's a great idea. And so I asked, and they said, absolutely. And now it's actually works out even better because they can figure out how many people are getting Hoop Ball branded Hawaiian Isles coffee, and we can hopefully keep sending them new customers. It works out for everyone. At HI Kona Coffee on Twitter, give them a follow. A match made in coffee heaven. I know Brewski was telling me he wouldn't have made it through the deadline without it. And the great Micah Patria, who I'll be talking to later on today for the premium show, the weekly lineup edition, and also on Wednesdays for our DFS show. He's on, that dude goes through like a bag of that stuff a day. He doesn't sleep much. All right, so that's Hawaiian Isles. Check them out. You can also Google search, or Amazon search, for Hawaiian Isles, and you can find it that way. Again, HawaiianIsles.com is the website. Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, the presenting sponsor of all shows at Hoop Ball. Reverse chronological lightning round. We'll go through Sunday, Saturday, and then if necessary, Friday to give you an update on every single team's most recent game. And we will, of course, pause intermittently to talk about teams involved in trade deadline moves and what we've learned so far. So we'll dive right in. Portland and Dallas. Dallas, a big come-from-behind win. Portland totally melting down in the fourth quarter. Damian Lillard was having a big ball game, and then, he was actually having a quiet ball game. He had a monster third quarter when the Blazers pushed out in front by 15, and then nobody on Portland could hit a shot in the fourth, but he still ended up okay. What we've seen so far from Rodney Hood is mid-20s in the minutes department, and that's not even close to enough to put him into fantasy value. So move along. The Dallas side, on the other hand, is one that I do want to take a moment to pause with because, well, they made some serious moves at the deadline. Of course, they brought in Tim Hardaway Jr. and Trey Burke and Courtney Lee. They brought in Justin Jackson and waived Zach Randolph. They sent out DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews, Dennis Smith Jr. And so effectively, what they've done is they've sent away their power forward and their center, their starting power forward and center, Harrison Barnes and DeAndre Jordan, who are combining for about 60 minutes a ball game, and brought back exclusively small forwards and smaller outside of Zebo, who they promptly cut. And what I was saying on Friday, and then again in kind of a long Twitter rant over the weekend, is that this opens up a host of minutes in the Mavericks front court. It's not always entirely clear who's going to be seeing all of them. Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith has been sort of moving up to a bigger part on the depth chart. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been playing small forward. Doncic and Jalen Brunson started in the backcourt of this ball game. And this is not a perfect example of what I'm about to describe, but it is one worth pursuing. Dwight Powell played 27 minutes off the bench. Maxi Kleber played 26 minutes as a starter. And everybody's like, Dan, you said Maxi Kleber was going to be dominant from this point to the end of the year. Yeah, I still believe that's true, but even good players have bad games. And Kleber's more in that, I think I was saying top 65, top 70, where there are definitely going to be down games. And if this is the down game, we're in business, folks. When he plays starters minutes, he's a top 80 guy. And there's sort of no messing around with it because he does interesting and useful stuff. Now, he hasn't shot the ball particularly well over the last little bit, and that's okay. But there's one game in there where he knocked down a bunch of shots. Looking at what he's done recently, he had 2 threes and 2 blocks in their game on Friday, which we won't cover on this show, but I'll throw it out there. 7 rebounds and a steal in the game before that. 9 rebounds, 8 rebounds. When he's settling in, to me, he has the upside of blocks. His block rate has always been very good. Rebounds, threes, steals. And he's been able to do it on the year on a pretty good field goal percentage, mid to high 40s. Over the last month, in 23 minutes a game, he's a top 121 guy. You bump that up by another 10 to 20%, easy inside the top 100. I'd say top 65 upside and probably settles into that top 80 range. So I love it. Dwight Powell, I'm also fairly excited about, although slightly less so because he doesn't hit the three-pointer. Overall on the year, where Kleber, I think, is right around 80%, 78% at the free throw line. I believe Dwight Powell is just behind him there at 75%, so a little bit less. His field goal percentage is going to be higher because he doesn't step out and shoot. And they both rebound. I'd give Powell the slight advantage in that on a per-minute basis. But Kleber, believe it or not, even though you think of Powell and you think of him as the big rebounder, the high-energy guy, Kleber actually has the far superior block rate on the year. Now, Maxi is at 1.2 blocks on the year in 19 minutes a game. And I don't know that necessarily goes to 1.8 as he hits 27 minutes lately, but 1.5 maybe. Even if it stays at 1.2, that's not bad. And I don't think Powell is getting up quite to that mark. So I put him slightly behind Maxi, but I like both of these guys. I think when they play teams, and it's going to depend on the opponent as well. You know, Al-Farouq Aminu being the power forward on the Portland side, you sort of didn't need to be able to play those guys side by side, but they can. And it warms my heart that in a game, and I'm going to take the Kleber side again, in a game where Maxi Kleber was not shooting the ball well, and by all accounts just wasn't really playing all that great, he still got in for the final 4 minutes. He was a closer for them. So 26 minutes almost feels like the low water mark for him. I love it. Lakers got blown out by Philadelphia, but I don't really care about that because JaVale McGee is back, baby. 21 and 13 for JaVale on 10 out of 15 shooting. Yeah, he missed a couple of free throws, and that was a little bit of a downer. But a steal and a block. He looks like he's ready to roll. Ivica Zubats is out of town. Tyson Chandler is a traffic cone again. The adrenaline of the first few games as a Laker has completely worn off. And I believe McGee was like a +9 in this game, and Chandler was something like -25. I mean, it's very clear who needs to be on the floor, and it's JaVale. And that's great because we hung on to him everywhere. That, to me, is really the only story in this ball game. Reggie Bullock, he is also a little bit of a story. He played 30 minutes with a usage rate of 6.7. That's probably not enough. I do think that'll come up a little bit. He's settling in with a new team. Kyle Kuzma, LeBron, JaVale, Brandon Ingram, guys that have been there all year or longer, got most of the shots. But to see Bullock log 30 minutes right out of the chute was a nice positive. I know Josh Hart was hurt, but his minutes were trending down anyway. Rajon Rondo's minutes were almost non-existent in this ball game. And I can't help but wonder if they're going to be going to more spacing now. No one's going to be picking up Reggie after this one. But if he somehow comes away with some actual defensive stats and cranks up the three-pointer the way that we know he can, he's a guy to keep one eye on. But you're not going to have to go and get him. I doubt that he's owned in many leagues at all. He's only owned in one league that I'm involved in. And it was me streaming him today, and I regret it. Moving along. Phoenix, Sacramento. As per usual, Phoenix got whipped early. The reserves had to come in and try to make it a little bit of a better ball game. And then they did. And they still lost by a bunch. Marvin Bagley, career-high 32 points. He also made most of his free throws, which was really something else. That was a spot where he had struggled mightily earlier in the year. I can't wrap my head around the fact that maybe he's just fixed that mid-season, but I guess there's a possibility. As with these young guys, it's tough to know. He's a 68%er on the year, but he's been far better than that lately. Especially this game where he hit 11 out of 13 at the line. Last month, he's still sitting around that 65% mark. Last 2 weeks, it's at 77%. So who the heck knows? Maybe he's getting better, or maybe he's due for a nasty regression. In any event, he played 31 minutes, tied for the most on the team with De'Aaron Fox. And if he's playing like this, it's going to be tough to take him out of the lineup. Nemanja Bjelica actually got the start and still had fantasy value in this game somehow. Phoenix side, Devin Booker hurt his knee but played through it. And, man, I mean, they're just like, they got to get him off the ball. He's got to be off the ball. He's such a good shooter, but his decision-making is just not good. 6 assists to 5 turnovers in this game. Not good. Not good enough. Mikal Bridges missed some free throws, but otherwise he just continues to do all the things we want him to. He's basically 1 3-pointer away in this game from having a fantastic ball game. 9 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals again. This kid has been awesome. Tyler Johnson got the start in this game, played 31 minutes, but only had 9 points on 4 out of 12 shooting, 5 boards, 3 assists, and a steal. You could keep one eye on him. I'm guessing he got picked up and then dropped in a lot of leagues, which is kind of what we expected because you guys said, should we go get him? And I said, nah, he's kind of garbage. You know, even when he gets the minutes in Miami this year, he put up 1 good game and then 2 or 3 bad ones, and it looks like that may be what happens in Phoenix. Although, impossible to know from 2 games. That's the key here. If he settles in and starts to be a little bit more assertive with the Suns, he could ultimately end up with fantasy value. You look back at kind of the career stuff with him, the field goal percent is not going to be very good. The free throw percent is historically okay, although he wasn't shooting it well this season. I can't completely explain that. Long ago, he was, the quote-unquote guard that could get you some blocked shots, but over the last 2 seasons, the steals have been trending down along with the minutes. And so my hopes are not all that high. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least keep one eye on Tyler on the off chance he does start to feel comfortable and or / Devin Booker gets shut down if they pull the plug on him at any point. Or TJ Warren, if he completely, I mean, he's been out for a while, but if they officially pull the plug on these guys, you got to believe that Johnson's going to become one of the lead horses at that point. You take Booker out, and then everybody gets 1,000 shots, including, heaven forbid, Josh Jackson, who will miss most of them. Jonathan Isaac, oh my God. Orlando, 124, Atlanta, 108. Orlando looks amazing lately with Jonathan Isaac as the tip of the spear. 17 points, 3 rebounds, 3 threes, 2 steals, 5 blocks, 10 cash stats, 7 defensive stats. I mean, he's owning the league. This is what we knew would happen, and the problem is how long it took. Because with just basically 2 weeks of good ball games under his belt, he's now moved his season mark to the top 125 range and higher after this ball game. And it breaks my heart because I held him as long as I could, and I couldn't hold him long enough. Breaks my freaking heart. I had him in 2 situations where he would be absolutely perfect for everything that I'm doing. A punt assists build where he gets none. He never gets an assist. I need threes. I need percentages. I need rebounds, steals, blocks. I mean, this is like, he's the prototype. And I dropped him. And I know I said I had to be okay with it at the time. But this still is just, it's just a kick to the groin like you couldn't. Maybe you guys can believe it. He's been a top 30 guy over the last 2 weeks and improving. He is going to win you categories by himself with shot blocking, with steals. I mean, the numbers are just, it's outrageous. He's averaging almost 4 combined steals and blocks over the last 2 weeks. It's Giannis level stuff. It's AD level stuff. Obviously, he doesn't do the other things that those guys do. That's why they're first rounders, and he's not. But with what he's doing at the defensive end right now, he could easily be a top 40 guy the rest of the year. And that would be enough, by the way, to probably pull his season-long mark up near top 75. And the killer is just when you're that bad for October, November, December, and half of January, it's really hard for people to hang on. So I forgive all of you guys if you guys forgive me. I hung on as long as I could, and I told you on the podcast, I'm hanging on. It's a luxury stash. And then I had like 8 guys get hurt on my team, and I thought, well, those guys, at least I know, were producing when they were healthy. I got to get rid of the guy who's not. Meanwhile, Kent Bazemore can't get up over to 20 minutes again, and it's looking like he should have been the drop when he got hurt. I don't know that it would have been enough anyway. Whatever. I'm pissed about it. Atlanta got blown out, so the minutes were all over the place with this team, and nobody played particularly well. Jeremy Lin, story on Sunday about him looking for a team that could give him a few more minutes, perhaps, down the stretch. He wants to make a run at a postseason and didn't get traded. Rare off game for Dwayne Dedmon. Unusual, mind you. This Atlanta team was strange because nobody really had that game that totally broke their fantasy team, but everybody was generally kind of poor. Like, nobody was all that good in this one. You could maybe make the argument that Taurean Prince, because he had 2 threes, a steal, and a couple of blocks, sort of floated value. But overall, they just got worked by an Orlando team that has now embraced Jonathan. Orlando, we all could have told you. All you needed to do was figure out how to get Jonathan Isaac to give a crap on a nightly basis, and you guys would have been fine. We had basically given up that was going to happen. Well, suddenly now they're a game and a half out of the playoffs. Orlando is. Almost exclusively thanks to the turnaround of the one, the only Jonathan Isaac. By the way, Kent Bazemore, I'm inclined to say that you can drop him if you absolutely must. He's not the first guy I'm dropping on my team, but he's probably the second right now because it looks like, and you guys know I love Baze. I've had him in multiple leagues for multiple seasons in a row because of his steals, blocks, and threes, but it looks like Atlanta is intending to keep him around 16 minutes a game unless they desperately need his leadership, and they're tanking, so they don't. And he had over 16 minutes only one time since coming back from injury. That was, I think, 19 minutes the day before when we get to that ball game. And that is unfortunate. So I'm hanging on as long as I can in the hopes that something pops here in Atlanta, a trade, whatever, a buyout. But if somebody surfaces, and nobody has in the last day or so, because most of the stuff that happened over the deadline, I think people have already reacted to. But if somebody else surfaces here in the next little bit, there's your potential move. But there are other guys I think I'd cut first. And we'll get to them, most likely. Miami at Golden State. Heat blew an 18-point lead in this ball game, but got some interesting production. Justice Winslow finally had one of his better games again. Josh Richardson, this is like 2 months in the waiting. 37 points, 8 3-pointers. Still not much on the defensive end for whatever reason. Dion Waiters had 24 points in 41 minutes in this ball game, which tells you all you need to know about the weirdness in Miami. He had a steal, he had a block, he had 6 threes, but you know the Waiters story, guys. You can try to parse this thing any way you want, and he's going to get picked up in some leagues because of this ball game, but he's a bad percentages guy, like an atrocious one. We're lucky that he isn't shooting any free throws at all this year. He's attempted like 3 all season, but he's a career 70% at the foul line. He's a career 41% field goal dude, and that includes season when he wasn't taking 5 to 5.5 3-pointers a night. He will destroy your team long before he helps you in any traditional category-based format. So don't say I didn't warn you. Hassan Whiteside was actually playing oddly well in this ball game, but you know how it goes. If Bam Adebayo is playing okay, then sometimes they just roll with it. It's the darndest thing. Adebayo had a good ball game from by all accounts in this one, but you know, Whiteside had actually been playing a lot better over the last couple of weeks. Okay, Spoelstra. But at least he only missed 1 free throw, so we'll go ahead and we'll bury that one. By the way, Whiteside a +7 in this game, Adebayo a -10, so figure it all out if you want. Starting lineup for the Heat was generally positive, and I know the Warriors went on their run in the third quarter. They always do, and the Heat actually outscored Golden State by 6 in the fourth quarter, and you can figure it out. I know sometimes guys get hot, but whatever. We told you Kelly Olynyk, you weren't going to hang on to that one. Luckily with Whiteside, he only needs 21 to 24 minutes to put up some kind of fantasy value, and lately he's been a little bit more acceptable at the free throw line, so we'll ride it out. Boogie got up to 26 minutes in this ball game. You're seeing some of the rust on an even odd basis here with this team, but otherwise there's sort of nothing else worth discussing on the Warriors. Saturday, plenty of teams left to cover. San Antonio at Utah, that was the day game. Spurs were without Derek White and Rudy Gay, and they missed them both desperately. Jakob Poeltl and Davis Bertans tried to lead them to victory, and that just wasn't happening. Royce O'Neal had a rare good game for Utah with the Jazz mostly at full strength, so there isn't a whole lot to pull out of that one. And you just sort of rumble along. You know, with San Antonio, it's sort of a different shooter in every one of these ball games, and if you're willing to ride that weird tidal wave, you're on your own. Cleveland at Indiana. This is one I wanted to pause on for just a moment. Cleveland is an interesting story because Kevin Love played in their game on Friday and logged 6 minutes, which, I mean, you want to talk about easing a player back in. That was it. It makes me think that he'll play something like maybe 12 in their next ball game, and then I think they only have one more after that before the All-Star break, so perhaps he gets up to 15 going into the break, and probably is, my guess would be that he camps out somewhere in the 24 to 28 range when all things settle. So if you're looking for the time to deploy Kevin Love, it's not yet. It's probably post All-Star break. If you're in an unlimited games format, obviously you use him, but if you're counting on this thing towards your games cap, probably not. What I will say about the Cavs, number one, Marquise Chris is actually playing for this team, and there's a weird, fleeting chance that might continue. Number two, Larry Nance played power forward alongside Kevin Love when Kevin did play in their game on Friday, and maybe there's a little bit of a floor spacing thing that allows them to play those two centers side by side. So if you're holding on to Larry Nance, keep doing it. He's owned in every single one of my competitive leagues, so just throwing it out there in case you're in a weird one where he got dropped. And he might actually be able to hang on to value. I do think the rebounding numbers are going to go down quite a bit, but it seems like they could probably put him on the slightly faster big man, maybe guard the 4, let Kevin Love guard the 5, and then on the offensive end, Love can float away from the basket, whatever it takes. There is a way to make that work. The one fear is Tristan Thompson playing again, and I don't know that he will, but I also don't know that he won't. So keep an eye on that, but you're not punting on Nance just yet, because it does seem like his minutes right now, at least, are secure, and he's totally taken them back from Ante Zizic, who's disappeared again. Over on the Indiana side, we didn't get a chance to see Wesley Matthews yet. He'll be playing in their next ball game, and I have a feeling he's going to be pushing Corey Joseph to the fringe a little bit more. Miles Turner hurt his knee, but apparently is questionable. That's about as good of a result as we can get. I bet he misses a game, which stinks because he was rolling, but he's also not a super fast healer. But let's be pleasantly surprised. Maybe he'll get ruled in. I just don't want to bank on that. Corey Joseph, a near triple-double. This will probably be his best game of the year, especially if Matthews takes the minutes the way we think he does. And Tyreek Evans is not good. With Wesley Matthews coming in, my hope for Tyreek being sort of a solution for this team is no longer out there. I officially rescind that theory because they've replaced his minutes. Oladipos, that is. We already talked about Atlanta, but of course, Bazemore, this is a game where he got close to 20 minutes and had a better ball game. The Charlotte side, how dare you speak ill of my good friend Marvin Williams? Too many of you ask me, hey, is Marvin a drop? Is Marvin a drop if I want to pick up so-and-so? And how many times I got to tell you, no, he's not. He's now, by the way, climbed into the top 80 on the year after that slow start. He's number 70 over the last month. He's number 60 over the last 2 weeks. And he's number 46 over the last week. So let old man Marv take you to victory, my good friends. And it almost all depends on his week-to-week field goal percentage, because when he gets hot, he just crushes. It's outstanding, because he hasn't, this is like mind-boggling stuff. Marvin Williams has not committed a turnover since January 25th. 0. Since January 25th. That's a span of 7 ball games where he hasn't even so much as committed an offensive foul. He hasn't just had a pass hit him in the hands and roll out of bounds. He's so freaking consistent, and I don't know why you guys can't just get on board with that. I'm guessing a lot of you do, but too many questions on Twitter about whether or not you could drop old man Marv. He's going to shoot 43% because most of his shots come from downtown, and he's going to make 2 threes a game this year. Yeah, shooting percentage is down. He's shooting a ton from the perimeter. I was hoping for maybe another half a rebound. That was my hope. Dwight Howard leaving town. He's moved up from 4.7 to 5.5, but it's a little bit lower than expected. Cody Zeller has done a good job in that front, but even when Zeller was out, Marvin didn't rebound as much as I expected. And he's been closer to 4 or 5 lately, but he's hitting a ton of threes. He's getting steals and blocks. And like we said, over the last 30 days, he's averaging 0.4 turnovers a game, a steal, a block, and 2.3 three-pointers. That's roughly 4.2 cash stats per ball game without ever turning the ball over. There is a universe, and it's this one, where that's freaking useful. It's especially useful if you have a team of a few guys that have high turnovers. I generally don't have those teams, so he's actually less useful for my team than yours. He's great on a team where I've got Draymond Green and Chris Paul. Who the hell else do I have on that team? I'll pull it up right now while we're talking about it. Guys that are averaging over 2 turnovers per game. Chris Middleton's at 2.3. Gasol's at 2.2. Nikola Jokic is at 3.1. Marvin Williams is a brilliant fit on a team like that. He's perfect. A team that has a bunch of guys, high assist, high turnover dudes. Throw one starter in there that doesn't turn it over at all. He could gain you, just the turnover category, he could save you 2 points in Roto by deploying him instead of a similar guy that commits 1.5 turnovers. Look at your Roto stats over the course of the year and subtract 82 turnovers from it and see how that changes where you're ranked in that category. I'm guessing it'll be more than 1 point. I love Marvin Williams, if you guys didn't know. Nice to see Jeremy Lamb bounce back. He's been starting to show some life again. Charlotte's showing some life again. Not surprisingly, Cody Zeller's back. He's everything for them. They were just awful with him off the floor. Biyombo and Willie Hernan-Gomez are turds. Toronto hanging on to beat New York. Marc Gasol's first game was He played 19 minutes, and I have to really hope that number comes up. I'm inclined to believe it does. Serge Ibaka played 29 minutes. Pascal Siakam played 33. They're going to have trouble moving those guys out because they've been so good for Toronto. But also, they traded Delon Wright away. He's one of the young guys that they really liked. And Jonas Valanciunas. And to think that they're just going to stick a soul in Valanciunas' 19 minutes would be awfully surprising. I've got to believe that he works his way up into the mid-20s, and you probably see, a few come away from Serge, a few perhaps from Siakam. But Gasol at 19 minutes, I don't know about that one. That doesn't feel reasonable. I think this is probably a buy low. As I've said on a previous show, I don't know that he ever gets back to that top 20 type stuff he was doing at the beginning of this year in Memphis when he and Mike Conley just had rule of the roost. But he's going to play down the stretch, which is helpful. And if he's sitting inside the top 50 at some point the rest of the way, then that's going to be nice because at least you're going to get production out of him. And so for me, if this happens again, then you ought to be able to buy him very low. Freddie VanVleet got picked up in a lot of spots when he posted that 30-some-odd point game, and then Kawhi Leonard came back and he scored 5 points. Oops. How awesome is Mitchell Robinson? 15-7 with 3 blocks on 7 out of 9 shooting. He is going to be so much fun to own the rest of the way. Stud. Absolute stud. By the way, on the year, he's averaging 17 minutes and he's number 110. Over the last month, he's averaging 18 minutes, and he's number 61. That's amazing. Over the last 2 weeks, 64 on 19.5 minutes per game. This is what you got now. It's going to be tough for him to climb a whole lot higher than that, although, by the way, over the last week, he's number 36. But again, limited sample size. But the field goal percent is going to be crazy high. The rebounds are getting better, and his blocks are just through the roof. The rest of this New York team is a total mishmash. DeAndre Jordan is going to get his rebounds because he's going to play some increment of starters minutes, probably 26 to 28 per ball game. Kevin Knox, generally a points league kind of guy. Noah Vonleh is getting pushed out a little bit right now in favor of Mario Hezonja. Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be doing Dennis Smith Jr. things, meaning wildly inefficient. And then Emmanuel Mudiay is still going to challenge guys in the backcourt. The guy that I'm looking at on this team as the one that I don't think anybody's paying attention to yet is Mario Hezonja. We know he can come and go on a whim, and he's averaging like 18 minutes per game on the year, and that's been a dicey proposition because his percentages have been terrible. But when he feels confident and they give him the near starters minutes that he saw a couple of times, he can actually be fairly elite in steals. And he's not a bad rebounder either. He's, I think, taller than people realize. He's up around 6'9"-ish. So at 6'9", small forward, he can create a little bit of havoc on the wing as a really big guy. He's not a very good basketball player, but he can step out at the three, and he profiles as someone that should shoot the ball better than he has this year. He's 10% under his career mark from the free throw line, and he's about 2 or 3% under his career mark from the field, which was last year at 44. That was starting to show some progress in that regard. And if he can get up to 26, 27 minutes somehow, you could actually see a guy averaging like 1.4 to 1.5-ish steals per game. 11 points, 1.5 steals, 5 rebounds, 1.2 threes. That's something you could actually look at. So one eye on Hezonja as well. We'll put him on the we're watching with one eye list. We rumble along. The Clippers, with most of their new guys, no Wilson Chandler, and the results were mixed in this ballgame. We'll start with Ivica Zubac. He played 23 minutes. Montrez got 28, so there was actually just a minute or two where they did, believe it or not, coexist. And I think a lot of this is what you should expect from Zubac. 12 points, 9 rebounds. I think the 3 blocks were arguably on the high side for him. And I know a lot of you are like, why can't he block 3 shots every night? Well, because there's like 3 guys in the NBA that can average 3 blocks a game in 23 minutes a night. And we've talked about at least one of them already. 2, I think, on this pod. We may have even mentioned all 3. Miles Turner, Hassan Whiteside, Anthony Davis, Mitchell Robinson is 4, perhaps. Zubac is not one of them. He's not one of them. You look at his marks throughout his career, he's averaged closer to 1 block in 20-some-odd minutes per game. And that, I think, is more what you should be expecting. If he's playing 23 minutes a game, he probably can get you 1.2-ish blocks per game. And if you put that with, 10 points and 8 rebounds, then he's a nice late-round center. He's in that Taj Gibson mold, which isn't bad, but it's not the top 60 guy that everybody's trying to sell you. He's not going to play enough to be that guy. Name to watch on this team that I thought would play more in this ballgame and didn't was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It seemed like a lot of these moves were designed to give him a little bit more wiggle room, but as a result of all of the weird pieces, nothing changed really on that front. Patrick Beverley continues to excel. Gallo's back, so he's doing his thing again. Landry Shamet got 27 minutes in his Clippers debut, and that may have been the one that blew me away a little bit, but he was hot. So you ride the hot hand. Shamet had 17 points on 9 shots in this game. I do think there are going to be games where Gilgeous-Alexander gets up closer to that 30-minute mark, and I think you're probably now, with him playing 30 minutes, and most of it alongside Patrick Beverley instead of Avery Bradley, I think that this is going to be good for him because Pat Bev is not, he's going to be distributing. He's not going to be looking for a shot very much. Tobias Harris being out of the starting unit means there are more shots available for a guy like Gilgeous-Alexander. He had too many turnovers in this game, but it was nice to see that he was passing. That was always the thing earlier in the year that made me very nervous about him, was that he wasn't really racking up assists the way that I was hoping for. Lately, he's actually shown some progress on that front. Over the year, he's at 3 assists per game. Over the last month, he's at 3.6. Over the last 2 weeks, he's at 4. And over the last week, he's at 4.3. So the closer you get to now, the higher that number has become. The problem, and this is actually sort of artificially depressing his value right now, which is a sweet spot to be in. The problem with Gilgeous-Alexander, number one, he still doesn't hit the three-pointer, almost at all. He's averaging 0.3 over the last week. And I feel like, memory looking back, there was a stretch in there where he was hitting a couple, but it was really brief. He's not a three-point shooter yet. He's doing his damage mid-range and at the rim. So if you're looking for threes, wrong spot. His numbers are also artificially depressed by the fact that he has 10 turnovers in his last 2 basketball games. But if you blend that all together, if you remove the 2.8 turnovers he's averaging over the last week, his numbers actually look pretty good. And I don't think that sticks. Field goal percent is going to be pretty good because he's not taking the 3 ball. He's an okay foul shooter. The lack of threes is upsetting. Obviously, out of your guard, you usually want somebody who's knocking down some 3-pointers. But maybe you have a team where they're very strong in that regard. I have one that is very strong in 3-pointers. I have Dame and Paul George on that team. So a guy like Gilgeous-Alexander would make a lot of sense if he was available. He's not. Points leagues, he actually loses some value because of his good percentages. They don't help you. But I do believe that, looking at his season numbers, he's much closer to 1.8-ish turnovers than 3 on the year. And if his opportunity remains high, as it seemingly has been over the last week or so, basically now we're looking since the Tobias Harris trade, I would venture to think, and remember they got blown out in Indiana, so that one, you almost can wipe it out a little bit. The combination of steals and blocks to go along with some assists now. That's a big change for him. If he's at 4 and change instead of 2 and change, that's a big deal. Good percentages and the low teens, that's a top 100 guy. I think he's finally able to push himself over that threshold. Landry Shamet is a guy we're going to watch. I'm not making any moves on that front. Kyrie Irving sprained his knee. The obvious choice here is to pick up Terry Rozier as long as he's out, so we're not going to spend too much time on that guy. But as a Laker fan, always enjoyable to watch the Celtics blow leads to 2 LA teams in a row. New Orleans loses to Memphis on the road. The Grizzlies actually won a ball game. Anthony Davis playing in both halves of a back-to-back. How about that? He didn't take that many shots in this ball game. 14 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Need to. He's Anthony Davis. Drew Holiday had a relatively slow ball game by his account. Julius Randle is going to be taking a lot of shots the rest of the way. And then the name that's emerged is Kenrick Williams, who had 10, 13, 7, and a block in this one. And I got to say, every time somebody comes back, I keep thinking he's going to disappear. And so far, he hasn't. He's played 30 minutes or more in 7 consecutive ball games. Maybe the bottom doesn't fall out. Maybe. I'm not completely convinced. Elfrid Payton was out for this ball game, which again sort of shifts everybody in this size department. And Stanley Johnson only played 7 minutes, and I have no idea if they actually plan on using him at all. And Etuan Moore only played 16 minutes in his return to the lineup. So does that actually encroach on Williams at all? I don't know. He played the most minutes on the team in this ball game. So, yeah, I mean, screw it. Stream him as long as you can. He's owned in every one of my leagues, so it's too late for me. But such low name recognition, there's probably a handful of you out there that could go ahead and stream him until they get healthy and see what happens. Anthony Davis owners, congratulations. Look like your guy's actually going to be logging minutes the rest of the way. I can't believe he played in the back-to-back. That was astounding. But here we are. Just remarkable stuff. I'm blown away. And I can't believe that me giving out the recommendation if you were a 4th, 5th, or 6th place team to go buy low on Anthony Davis and give up a top 40 guy is actually might work. That's why you roll the dice. Because if you were the 5th place team, you probably weren't winning your league anyway. You probably weren't winning it if it's head-to-head, unless you were just getting healthy after a really long stretch of injuries. You probably weren't winning your Roto League because there's a bunch of teams in front of you, and the best-case scenario was 3rd or 2nd place where you'd win some money but not a ton. Roll the dice on Anthony Davis. Chance that could actually win you a league, and it might work. Memphis got 30 minutes out of Joakim Noah in this game, but of course, Jonas Valanciunas was not in town yet, and Jaren Jackson got into early foul trouble, although he did end up eventually sorting that thing out. They went pretty big in this ball game, and they could get away with that because New Orleans was very big. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that's going to happen regularly for Memphis, but I wouldn't certainly buying in to Joakim Noah unless I saw him do it again with Valanciunas in town. Ivan Rabb played 28 minutes. He had 10 and 9. This is the issue with him. He needs really big minutes to post a nice fantasy line, and his free throw shooting is bad. So his ceiling is capped, but if you need rebounds and field goal percent, there's a chance he carves himself out a role. I still think that JV's the guy to own with that team, even though report coming off the bench, 19 minutes in Toronto, he was a top 90 guy. All he needs is 21 or 22 minutes to jump another round, and maybe he even pushes his way to 23 or 24. So I'm still very excited about Valanciunas. I don't think he was ever going to get to 30. There were suggestions that he might play like full starters minutes. He wasn't that great when he played 30 minutes in Toronto. Remember, he slowed down considerably. I'd rather have high-energy JV for 23 minutes. We'll see how it shakes out. Justin Holiday still logged 31 minutes. That was note number 1 on this ball game, and he looked decent, although he didn't get any steals. He's a hold. Delon Wright played 23 minutes in his Grizzlies debut. I bet that number comes up a little bit. There's no reason that CJ Miles needs to play 20 minutes for this team as they go into a tank station. Some of those should go to Wright. So I'm going to try to hold on a little bit longer there, give him another couple of games, see if those minutes slowly creep their way up towards 26 or 27. And if they do, then you're talking about a pretty decent fantasy guy. Avery Bradley started this game, which is, by all accounts, continues to be the great mystery of the NBA, and had one of the worst fantasy nights across the board, because he hurt you in field goal percent, he hurt you in turnovers, and he basically didn't help anywhere, outside of three-pointers. He shouldn't be playing 25 minutes right now. He shouldn't. There's no reason to. He's an expiring contract. What are you doing, Memphis? Get your head out of your butt. Washington had a couple of interesting games with their new pieces. Bobby Portis double-doubled in this one after scoring 30 in his Wizards debut. And it looks like, he played 29 minutes in this game. He looks like he actually could end up being a winner from this move. That surprised the hell out of me. Jabari Parker appears to be a winner in this trade because he was useless in Chicago, and he's playing anywhere from 20-something to 30-something minutes for Washington. Obviously, it helped all of these guys in the front court that Jeff Green left early in this ball game. He played just 9 minutes in the first quarter and then had a hip issue and did not return. It sounds minor, so we're not going to celebrate anything yet. But Jabari Parker deserves to be owned. Never thought I'd see the day. And in Chicago, it wasn't going to happen. But I needed to see him do it a couple of times. It looks like they want to give him a shot. He's playing hard for his new team right now and probably for a contract right now. And the Washington seems resigned to just going with this like 5-wing lineup and letting them figure it out. And the big loser in all that, unfortunately, is our good friend Thomas Bryant, who continues to put up fantastic per-minute numbers as a fantasy guy. He's just outside the top 100 in like 17 minutes a game, and it seems like he's stuck at that mark. And I have to admit, because he's been able to do it in 17 minutes, it almost seems crazy to drop a guy like that, because heaven forbid, all he needs is one game a week where he plays 25 minutes to be a top 100 guy. Can it happen? I don't know. I'm still sitting on him anywhere I can, but I totally understand if you can't, because they're just... I mean, it's funny, too. You listen to the Washington Wizards broadcast, they love him. He's like the ultimate fan favorite, but they won't give him the freaking 20 minutes. Anyway, Parker, yes, give him a look. Bobby Portis, yes. Consistency could end up helping him, even in the former dumpster fire that was the Washington Wizards. Things settled down a little bit with John Wall out of town. And then Thomas Satoransky, weird game, but, 7-7-11. Tough to complain about that, even without the defensive stats. Chicago side, a little bit of a revenge thing going on, I suppose. Otto Porter played relatively well. He should be fine the rest of the season. Lauri Markkanen looks good. Zach LaVine looks good. Chris Dunn didn't score much in this ball game, but I don't think that's why you really drafted him anyway. So, by all accounts, the Bulls have actually leveled off a tiny bit here. Can't figure out why Robin Lopez is still starting and playing at all, but here we are. And if they get rid of him, then Cristiano Felicio is going to have to play 25 minutes, and that is terrifying. Yowza. Oklahoma City, big come-from-behind win over Houston. Paul George is amazing. For Houston, Fareed ruined his game by missing some free throws, but otherwise things were fairly predictable on that front. Iman Shumpert we were checking out in his first game with the Rockets, and it didn't go very well. So we're not even really keeping one eye on him. He's like a quarter of an eye, if that. Orlando, we've talked about already. Milwaukee sat Giannis for this ball game, but they picked up Niko Mirotic, so we'll obviously pay attention to that when he is fully healthy and analyze. Again, my guess is he sits inside the top 100, but does take a fairly substantial hit. Detroit, that's a team to keep an eye on. Finally, one reason to care. They no longer have Reggie Bullock. They no longer have Stanley Johnson. Luke Kennard got 28 minutes with neither of those guys in town. Bruce Brown started and played only 19 minutes, and they just signed Wayne Ellington. And I'm inclined to say that if any of your other weird pickups near the All-Star break have flamed out quickly, Ellington might be worth a flyer grab. It sounds like he's going to be the starter, or hinted at, I suppose. They claimed that they were going to try to do the things with him they did with Reggie Bullock. And with Bullock, one of the notes, certainly, was that in Detroit, he was averaging 31 minutes a game. 2.6 three-pointers, but no defensive stats. So take Reggie Bullock and put Wayne Ellington's per 36s in there, and suddenly you actually have a guy who's useful. He's actually over 3 three-pointers in 31 minutes a game. He's around the same scoring, rebounding, and assists mark, but he's also up closer to 1.4 steals instead of half of one, and I like that. So I'm putting Ellington on my watch list, and he's a guy that I said on Friday's show I might consider making a speculative grab on even before he logs a game, because I've got this weird feeling he's going to come out, and Blake's going to find him for 2 or 3 threes in the first half, and he's going to be gone. But don't drop anybody useful, okay? Like, maybe a guy like DeLon Wright, I might actually go Wayne Ellington instead, but a lot of it depends on statistical need at this point. I've got some leagues where I do desperately need some three-point shooting. I've got other ones where I really don't, and that's a situation to monitor. So something to think about, at the very least. We didn't talk about the Denver Nuggets yet. Paul Millsap remains out. As long as he's out, Mason Plumlee is actually a pretty good grab, and then you just have to pray he doesn't take any free throws. Jamal Murray's back, so that means Monty Morris goes back to being nothing. If Gary Harris ever gets healthy, which he won't. Now it's an abductor strain. Then Malik Beasley might slow down also, but I wouldn't count on Gary Harris. Karis LeVert made his return for the Brooklyn Nets. He played 15 minutes and had 5 steals. Holy shamoly. He was a top 80 guy before going down. Generally overvalued because of very flashy scoring. He looked really good this year, don't get me wrong, but bad free throw shooting on pretty high volume, not a ton of three-pointers, and maybe a little bit high on the turnover mark was weighing him down a tiny bit. He's obviously a must-own guy, but don't go trying to buy on him with like a top 50 dude. That's just not his profile. Hope for top 65 and be content with top 80. Allen Crabbe hit 5 3-pointers in 21 minutes. He's a guy to keep one eye on. They're going to need some floor spacing now if LeVert is going to be doing a lot of the distribution. This is going to be a big thorn in the side of D'Angelo Russell. His fantasy value will have to take a hit with somebody else taking some usage away. By the way, this game with Dallas, I know we don't break down 2 games, but again, Maxi Kleber, 11 points, 2 threes, 2 blocks in this one. Sort of a Brook Lopezian kind of line in a blowout loss, so his minutes actually would have been higher if it was closer. This is why I remain very high on him. And then Minnesota, I think, is the only team we haven't talked about to this point. The Timberwolves desperately need their injured guys back. They had a little bit of Jeff Teague in this one. He played 17 minutes and was good, but they need more of that. They need Derrick Rose back for scoring off the bench. They need Rob Covington so badly. I mean, look at how things have completely unraveled for this team since Covington went down. It's been an ugly and precipitous fall. They've lost 4 games in a row. They're 8-20 on the road. They're falling out of the playoff picture. It's starting to make me a little bit nervous, but at the same time, I don't know why they just pull the plug on him. I think they'd like to see him play again. He might not be playing the giant minutes that he was before. That's something to keep in mind, obviously. That may not be in the cards. You know, look at Covington's minutes. I think you got to compare them, I guess, to what he was doing before his trade this season, and I don't think there was that big of a difference. In fact, it only went up by about 1 minute per game this year, but he only played 13 games with Philly before the trade anyway, so that number may have been on its way down. If he comes back, I would expect to see him closer to 28 to 29 minutes a game, not 34. He still would be a top 35 guy in that. So you can't, I know it's been rough, but you can't move on yet. Derrick Rose, I give you permission to move on if you want to. He was mostly a points league looking guy his percentages were solid enough where he was able to push himself sort of over the hump, but the injuries lately have really screwed him up. He hasn't looked right in almost a month now, and we haven't heard anything good about it either. I hold on if you can, but the opportunity is certainly there. That's the reason to hang on, because when he comes back, they need him to take 15 shots a game because Andrew Wiggins is atrocious most nights, and but just the health issue. I don't know that he may have had his sort of run early this year when he was right. And that's your 30-team recap. That's everybody. We did it, guys. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it. Quick look now at what's coming up on this Monday evening before we wrap up the pod. We'll save the gambling stuff for Twitter and for future shows. It's a pretty big Monday, in fact. 9 games coming up tonight. New York is in Cleveland. We'll obviously be watching the Cavaliers since I think we'll get probably 12 minutes out of Kevin Love. Charlotte at Indiana. We'll keep an eye on Wesley Matthews' debut. Washington is in Detroit. What's the deal with Jeff Green? How injured is he? We want to see how the minutes shake out once again for the Wizards. What is Wayne Ellington's role with the Pistons in his very first game, if indeed that is tonight? Brooklyn at Toronto. How many minutes does Karis LeVert play in this game? How many minutes does Marc Gasol play for the Raptors? The Blazers and the Thunder. Not much to watch in that ball game. Thank goodness. Clippers. You got Gilgeous-Alexander as a guy we're keeping an eye on. You got Landry Shamet we're keeping an eye on. JaMychal Green, Garrett Temple, all these new faces. Minnesota, nothing there. Milwaukee, nothing there. Chicago, nothing there. Dallas, you guys know we're watching the front court. Houston, nothing there. Miami, always the same crap with Miami. Dion Waiters, Hassan Whiteside, Bam Adebayo, Kelly Olynyk. The Spotations, as they say. And then nothing really with the Denver Nuggets. I almost ran out of gas. I just barely made it to the end of the podcast. I am low on steam, so I'm just going to take a moment here, a very brief moment, to say please check out the premium membership at Hoopball. As I said last week, and I think the sale ends today, unless it already ended. I should probably double-check that before I do a marketing pitch on a podcast, but I didn't. So now you guys just have to sit with me here while I triple-check while actually doing the show live, and the answer is it is still on sale. $7.99 for the last 2 months of the NBA season. The premium membership, $7.99. You can use a coupon code to knock that down to $4.99. It's $5 for 2 months of premium stuff. Give us a trial run, effectively. $5. It's less than the price of a sub nowadays. Subway is like $9 for a sandwich, which is way too much to pay for a sandwich. Give it a try, man. $4.99 for 2 months of getting all of our live chats. And not live written chats, man. This is video. You ask your question in a chat room. We answer it live on video. We do 6 of those a week. We've got all the in-season premium stuff on the written side as well, which I don't contribute on that side at all. And I know how amazing it is because Panda and his crew are just incredible. You got the layup line. You got DFS. You got pickups of the night. You've got dynasty reports, you've got weekly reports, you've got pickups, you've got drops, you got schedule grids, you got streaming calendars, depth charts, start sit tools for 8 and 9 cat projections, rankings, leaders. It's a hell of a thing, and it's $4.99 for the rest of the year. So please do check that out. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the premium tab, and join the fun. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. Running out of gas as I bid you all a wonderful Monday evening. Back at you tomorrow. Same time, same place. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.